Okay, so this is a part 2 of the tutorial about how to make something like a shooter in FLAX Engine. And sort of like a simple spaceship shooter. And for now it's just a camera. And in the last sort of like tutorial part 1, sort of like just created something like a controller you could fly around. And then there were these sort of like pillars that you could like, because there was a physics simulation. If you notice here for the character controller, it's a rigid body, and that means that it has physics. And then I've added let's see, where is it? There should be yes, sphere collider. There is you can say there's a sphere collider connected attached to the rigid body. That is this sort of like green circle here. That might be a bit difficult to see. I'm just gonna lower the resolution while I'm here, just so it records a bit faster, and I like the icons a bit better when they're this size or whatever. But just notice that there is a sphere collider, and we created that simple like in the last tutorial part 1, so that you can sort of like fly around. But what I did now was right in to add like a crosshair. I added let's see, a targeting scope. So it's a bit difficult to see, but there is a plane here. So I basically just took a plane and attached it to the camera. So now there is a plane here. You can see that there's a plane, but it's facing the wrong way. So there's two things you can do there. You can go into in here and make the call mode, instead of like just one-sided, you can invert it and sort of like make it two-sided. So if you make it two-sided, it will render in a sense, this material will render on this side and also this side. But it's just easier to like click here and just rotate it 180 degrees, and then you get a plane here, and then you just attach a texture that's something like a crosshair. So that's sort of like how I added. I don't know if it's easy to see. There's a crosshair here in 3D space that, in a sense, is attached to the camera. So what's different now is that if you hold down a button, you shoot bullets, and I added some you can see some guns. And the way to do that is you just again, you take the camera, it's here, and then I attached the right gun system, which is here. It's a bit difficult to see, but it's basically just a cube that I put a slightly different color on, and then a cylinder. And notice there's a cylinder here, these two, and then I added a metal material to this. And on the other side over here, you can see that I added basically just a cube. I sort of like scaled it and then put a cylinder, attached that to that, and then both of these are you can see connected to the camera, so they they follow the camera. So when I move the camera, you can like see that they follow along. So that's sort of like, so you just sort of like attach them to the camera here in the system, right? And then notice that they like point forward. So when you shoot something in the distance, it's gonna look like they move more and more towards something like this, sort of like the crosshair, right? And it's because as you something like you can see that they're actually not going to hit the crosshair, but they follow the same direction as the crosshair, something like in parallel. So you can like see that what's actually happening in 3D is that they're actually shooting exactly down, in a sense, the forward direction of the camera. So you just sort of like attach them right in front of the camera, and then they sort of like basically look good, and like as it were they're supposed to, and they're like aiming or pointing more or less directly, something like at the center spot of the camera. So that's like how you add this. And then I added so that there's physics on the bullets, so you can you have to hold the one, so you can like shoot these here, so they knocked over, and you can also in a sense fly into stuff because there is a physics collider on the camera. So the question is, how then do you do this? And to spawn things, I'm technically spawning something here and giving them something like velocity and in a sort of like physics simulations. What you want to do is you want to first create something in the scene that you then turn into a prefab. So in this case, we start with a rigid body because we want it to collide with these other objects and with physics stuff. And the way that you do that is you use what's called a rigid body, or something that's quotation marks, a physics simulation body, and then you just add that here. So now we have a rigid body that's just some like attached to the scene. I don't know if you can see it. It's down here, and you can't really see it. It's just sort of okay. And let's just remove this for now. There is a rigid body here, and there isn't really anything special about it. And we can just sort of like increase it to a height of like 100, I think. Let's see. Let's put it at a height of 40 here. So now we have a rigid body here. And we want to turn this into a bullet. So the first thing that I do here is that I take a primitive, a cube, and just add it. And you'll notice that that the cube is sort of like too big. And the second thing I want to do is I want to add a box collider. And it happens to just sort of like be the exact same shape of the cube. And when it's attached to the cube, you will notice that if I scale the cube, let's see here, position 0.1, the box collider is also scaled, something like with the cube. So for instance, if I write 0.5 here, it's a bit difficult when you zoom, but for instance now, notice that in a sense the scale is inherited to the stuff that's attached to each other. So now I can sort of like create, make sure that the box, that the collider has exactly the same shape as the cube. So now I can, for instance, write, let's see here, let's make it 0.2, 0.2, oops, yeah, 0.2, 0.2. So now we have this, and we have something that could be a bullet, and we have, you can see that now it follows correctly here. The problem is that the rigid body needs this collider to be attached directly to the rigid body, or it doesn't really work. So now that we have the right size, or for both the cube, I could say the bullet and the graphics of the cube, and then the collider, or in a sense the physics shape of this, we want to take this and move it and connect it to the rigid body instead, so that the box collider is connected to the rigid body. But when we move something, FLAX engine makes sure that it keeps the same size. So you will notice that we typed in, let's see here, let's just type it back here. So now we have the cube here. Notice that it's 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, but the box collider is 111, except that it inherits the scale from this. So it's actually something like this multiplied by this, and it sort of like remembers that. Notice that when we take the cube, these numbers here, and attach it to the box collider, it gets the correct numbers. So we don't have to type that in and like guess, so we can like inspect visually and make sure that things fit, and then in a sense move this so it's all connected correctly. So the second thing is what we want to do. Now we have a level 1 here. Let's just create a new folder. We call it prefabs trash. So let's call it this for now. And we moved in here. So now we can take here and we can right click, and there is create prefab. And we just call this bullet test. Let's call it 004. Now we have a prefab here, and they are much easier to spawn from code. And now we can basically also delete this here. So now, because we have created the prefab, now it's here, and we can work with the prefab here now, and you can see that it's sort of like what we created here is basically here. And for instance, we can attach a script here if we want to, and we can enable or disable gravity and so on. And when we have done that, we can click save, right? So we can actually work with. So now, for instance, if I take this prefab, we can move it into the scene. Oh, let's see, what am I doing wrong here? Oh yeah, this is an error in this is a bug that sometimes you can't see stuff. So let's for instance see here. Now we have this and this. So now we have these prefabs that we've added, and you can see that they're green here because they're prefabs. So now we can like move these, for instance, here in front of the camera. Let's just. Where is it here? So now we have these cubes. Where are they? Oh, and It's just here. So now we can now we should be able to see them. Now there are these two cubes, and notice that if I double click the prefab here and I click enable gravity, so now when we press play, both of them have gravity. But if I click here and I disable gravity, notice what happens. Both of them don't have gravity. So it's basically a way of having like one place where you decide all the settings, and that's in a sense what a prefab is. You have to remember to save it, and you can somehow create like prefabs so like that affects stuff like this. This isn't really that important right now, but and you can like see that they're like green here in this here. What matters is that they're easier to work with from code. So that's in a sense what I'm shooting with these bullets. You can also see if you notice over here, the bullets list as these green bullets that then last for 4 seconds and disappear. And you can see them, they will start to appear over here when I press play. So you can see that now suddenly there's something green appearing, and that's because it's prefabs that I'm spawning, and they're much easier to spawn from code. So let's look at the visual script for like how this was done then, and you can see that it's here, and it's really not that advanced. So what we have here is a very simple. Basically, this is here we have a counter, and I'm just gonna like explain quickly what it does. Every single frame it adds 1 to a value unless it's more than 12, and then it goes back to 1. So basically when the video game runs, every frame it just counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then it goes back to 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, and then it counts that way over and over and over again. It's just sort of like a counting loop. And basically when I hold down the button, let's see, it just sort of like non-stop counts. So right from the start it has the default value of 1, and then every frame it just sort of like adds 1 to that. So that's in a sense how it works. It should technically be 0, because in the first frame it will get here and then it will like add 1 and then will be 1, but it doesn't really make a difference, but technically this should be a 0. And then if this counter is greater than 12, and I want it to just go to 12 and then back to 1, if it reaches 13 it sets it to 1, and that makes it loop. So now I have a counter that just basically goes that way, and you can see that I'm logging it here, so we should be able to see it in the debugger log here. So now when you can say, let's just clear here. Notice that that right now it looks a bit weird, but there's these numbers here where it like counts up, and you can see that if we click look at the debug logger here, that it first says 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then it goes back to 1. So it counts correctly, and you can like check that stuff here, not in the content folder, but you click the debug log here. So all that's happening here is that I create a counter, and it does so that in a sense the reason that it's not shooting non-stop, but there is a bit of delay between the bullets, is because when that counter hits 6, it shoots. It can shoot from this barrel, and when it reaches 12, it can shoot from this barrel. So it's a way of like creating a bit of delay between the bullets. So that's sort of like what happens here, and we can just sort of like let's just add a comment here. Let's see here, and we call it a comment, and we move this here, and let's move it here, and I don't know, let's move it here, and move it here, and we call it delay bullet counter loop, right? So that's sort of like what it is, and now we simply like can see like this this sort of like does that, right? This here is a log which prints it. If I don't write log, and just be aware when you search for log, there's two boxes at the top where one says, if you read the text, like the hover text, what the one says here, just log message, and if you're like a bit unlucky, the other one will write like context. So there's these two log here. I don't know how you use this, but the box that I saw, like it can print more or less anything. For instance, the count of the bullets. It's just sort of like the one that's called log and where it doesn't say context. Now, for some reason, when you search, sometimes the order of these here change. So sometimes the one with context is at top, sometimes it's not. For instance, notice the top one now is just this one, right? It's just the one that says message. And if we search again, the top one is now the one that says context. And if we like search again, now the top one is just the one that says message. So it like for some reason skips between these, and it's probably a bug, but I don't know why. But the one that you probably want is just the one called log. And to make sure you get the right one, just hover over it. And notice that now the first one says status void FLAX engine debug log, and then object message, object context. And object message and object context are the two things that will be added here. So when it says context there, so like that's why it adds it. So now if I hover, you can see that it's the second one that says context, and the first one here just says debug log object message, and this one says debug log object message object context. So in a sense, the stuff in the parentheses is how many, in a sense, nodes, or you say buttons, are connected to these here, to these nodes, or in a sense these boxes. So you just want to check. You can like check to see you get the right one, and it sort of like flips the order for some reason. So just sort of like you want this one, and you can just sort of like hover again and check, and now it's not the first one. Now it says object message, object context, not the one you want, and then it says okay, static void FLAX engine debug log object message, and it doesn't follow with object context. Then get this one. So that's sort of like how you get that. Then here is where we like spawn this stuff. And this is a little bit like difficult to understand, not understand, but perhaps to read. And technically, I don't need this anymore. This was just sort of like, it's just because I had to like debug. But it's technically just gonna make the engine run a bit slower, that it has to execute some code that I don't need. So I'm just gonna delete that. And if you need more ports on these sequence boxes here, you just sort of like press delete, or you can like add a ton of like boxes here with these plus and minus. So right now I just need this many, and that's sort of that. So let's talk about what happens here. And what happens is where should we let's just move this here. And move this here. Let's just check. Yeah, they line up. All right. So I'm just gonna move this here just because it might be a bit difficult to understand. So the first thing we do here is this is where we spawn stuff, and this is an if condition, and you just find that by right clicking and searching for if. Then it says flow if. Then you get an if box. And then the way that I just saw like connected to in a sense on fixed update, you add on fixed update here. It's like on this list here somewhere, add override. That's where you get that box that starts all the code and that runs every frame. So like all this code, make sure that all this code here runs every frame, right? So what I hear is that I have an if condition that's a Boolean and. It's a Boolean and. And it's perhaps a bit difficult to reach. We can just sort of like remove this here. I don't. That wasn't. If you notice, that wasn't connected to anything. So what happens here is that we made this counter that is constantly counting from like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then goes back to 1 and then counts again and again. It's sort of like a counting to 12 loop. So if the value is 6 in that loop, it can shoot. So on the frames where the counter has reached 6 or is specifically 6, when this counter integer equals, this box is called equals, Let's see if we can find it. This is sometimes a bit difficult. It's on comparisons, I think. So let's see here, equals. So you need to like search for equals and then find comparisons. Let's see, I can find it. Equal, I think here there is sort of like comparisons here. So just search for equal. If you search for equals, let's see here, it disappears. You see, there is no comparisons when you search for equals. You need to search for like equal, and then when you go down, you can see that there is these comparisons. You can search for equals, are not equal, greater than equal, or less than equal, right? So you just search for equal here, boom, and then you get this box. And then if the counter loop is 6 and the button is being pressed and you search, you get that, you search for, let's see here, you search for mouse, and then you need to find input, because that's all like input is all like where usually all the simple like buttons and mouse stuff is and so on. Then you want to search for get mouse button, and then you just search in, but that's the one you need. Search get mouse button, and then you get this box. And notice that it has arrows, and sometimes it's a bit annoying that you have to like connect this. So you can just sort of like right click and click convert to pure node, and now it doesn't need arrows. Now you can just, for instance, you can set it to the right, and you can like connect that instead if you want to. But so that's how you create that box. So now we have, if the loop counter is equal to 6 and the button is pressed down, then we in a sense create this, spawn this prefab. And this box here, you search for spawn prefab and you get this. Again, there's a list, and sometimes the order is a little bit different. So you want to try and like create let's see here, like click some different ones. For instance, there's this, it just requires a position, and then notice that you search for spawn prefab. Sometimes it will I don't know, let's see here, spawn, so you search for spawn prefab. Some of the boxes, for instance this box, has not the same, in a sense, connections. So depending on what box you pick, it might be, in a sense, for instance here, it's like a different box. So some of them are actually different when you like get that list of like spawn prefab, and the one you want is spawn prefab, and that has that says spawn prefab, prefab, you know, static actor FLAX engine prefab manager spawn prefab, and parenthesis prefab, and then vector 3 position. So you want to in a sense tell it what the prefab is going to be, and then what position the prefab is going to be spawned at, right? So this is the box that I use here. So let's just delete that. And what I do then is that I have let's see here, I have added to the guns in a sense an empty actor that's called the gun spawn point. And this is in a sense where I want the gun, the bullets to spawn, and I just sort of like you could say let's see, camera, and then right click, and then new, and just an actor, and then it creates an empty actor, and you add that. It's just sort of like a 3D point that that isn't really anything else, but it's a 3D point. You can see that it's a 3D point that has like a coordinates, and then that's all of that. And then I get that position. So the way that I get the position of this prefab, this gun, the bullet spawn point, is that I basically just search for position, and then under actor I can get local position, but I want the global position. I want where, in a sense, this point is in like global space, so I spawn it in a sense in the world, and not just as it were connected to the gun. But I don't want the local position. I want get position, and then it will say that it can like return a vector 3 or like the position, but it needs an instance, and that instance is the gun point 1 that you just in a sense pick, and then you drag in, and then you have that, and then it will find the position of this gun spawn point and sort of like say that's where the bullets are supposed to start from. So that's sort of like quite simple, right? So that's in a sense what happens here. So and then to like get this here asset reference, I just click the, in a sense, the here, you know, I created this prefab from earlier. I just move it in, and then I have that here, and now I have the position and what prefab I want to spawn. And then the last thing I do is that I basically it tells you what it is here. It creates an actor. And for instance, if I want to you know, set the velocity, that requires an instance, right? I need to set the velocity on something, and that's in a sense this actor. In a sense, it has created the prefab, and now the prefab in the rest of the code is sort of here. So what I need to do is let's see here, so set rigid body, so linear. So basically, when I want to add you know, velocity, so it in a sense starts shooting the bullet, or the bullet moves, I need to connect that here, and it will automatically convert it from an actor to a rigid body that works with this. So when you connect this, it sort of like does this, right? So what I'm doing is that I'm creating a variable here, add parameter, that's an actor. Let's see here. You can see then it says here, so add parameter actor, and then I double click, and so I'm like I call this placeholder bullet what do you call it, variable. So now we have this, and then I store, in a sense here, I just I wanna if you like wanna so like set up this, if you move this in, you get it, and you need to search for set spacebar it's like set parameter, and then you will get something that says parameters set parameter, and now you can do that, and now you will notice that they are here, and we have the placeholder bullet variable, and so it's a bit easier. Instead of like connecting it directly to these boxes, I first store it in this variable, and so like, and then I connect it to these, and then it's stored in these, then it's stored in a sense in this variable over here. So now I just want to delete this, where do we, here, because I already have done that here, and then I can, after I have stored it in a variable, I can just sort of like move it in again, and that makes it a bit easier to read, because I have to do a few things over here, and where if I had to just use this here, it would create something like a total mess and unreadable wires. So it's a way of making stuff more readable. So over here, the first thing I do is I want to set the linear velocity, and basically what I do is I just search for let's see, linear velocity, and it says rigid body because it's a rigid body we created in the prefab is a rigid body. Then we get set you know set the linear velocity, and then it needs an instance, and instead of connecting it like over here where it would somehow, you know, let's see, like for instance, suppose that I wanted to do that again, you know, then I have to like you know, I have to like connect this again. Notice that it turns into like rather unreadable stuff, so that's sort of like why I do that. So I can keep things separate over here. And then what I do is I basically just get the forward direction, because this set linear velocity box needs a direction and it needs like the prefab instance. So to connect I just move this in here, where I stored the prefab, and then I can just sort of like connect that here, and we'll just say as like rigid body, but it was like connected before, and then that's how I create these two boxes here. That's sort of like all that does, and then I just like moved it around. So you can see that it first goes here and then it goes here. And to get the direction, or that in a sense I get something, there's something called you can search for, it's called direction. And actor get direction will get something like the forward pointing vector. Depending on like what rotation you have, that's a cheap way of just saying that it's sort of like the forward direction, whatever direction you are pointing in at any given moment. And that's why what happens now when I press play is that in a sense it's constantly getting the forward direction, or the direction that the camera is pointing, and shooting the bullets as it were in that direction, if that makes sense. So that's why this happens. So first I'm spawning stuff, and then I'm adding velocity, and then after that I also set the rotation so that it's not, so that it's sort of like rotated, the bullets as it were are rotated in the direction. So for instance, notice that the bullets are in a sense rotated, so they like shoot this way, and when I move this way, they are also in a sense pointing the right way or pointing forward. So it's just sort of like setting the rotation, so it's like, so the bullets are constantly pointing forward and sort of like looking the way they should. And you do that just by you wanna set the Euler angles. The Euler angles are something like the rotation angles. So you just wanna, in a sense, you search for Euler, set Euler angles, and notice that they also need this instance. So we're just gonna get this sort of like where we stored this prefab that we spawned, sort of like this prefab that we spawned, and sort of like the code and the reference to that. Then we just connect it here, and it will sort of like work. And this doesn't take a rigid body, so it just works right away. And then and then we sort of like get the Euler angles. But you can like try like mess around with that, but that's sort of like why. And then last we get the box called destroy, which sort of like despawn stuff, and object destroy, and it will something like say static void FLAX engine object destroyed parenthesis, it will take an object and a float time left. So that's the box you want, and it's just the one called object destroy. And then I just type in a sense what object I want. That was this sort of like prefab that we generated earlier. And then I write, let's see here, how much time I want to like, how much time do I want. I add like a float. You just search for float, and then you pick the first one here, and then you can type like a value, and I want it to be 4 seconds, so I just type that here. So now after 4 seconds after the bullets have spawned, they sort of like despawn. So now we have something like, notice that now they sort of like disappear again, and notice the green text out here. First they appear, and then after 4 seconds they start disappearing, right? So you can basically see that the code running. They last for 4 seconds, and then they disappear from the video game again. So I don't know if you can like see that out here, but that's sort of what's happening. And now we have this sort of like video game where you can fly around, and these bullets have physics properties, and you spawn them. Then you give them velocity, and you make sure that they are like pointing in the right direction. So in a sense it looks like the bullets are constantly shooting forward. And then because they have physics stuff, they can interact with other physics stuff, and that's sort of like how you create this. So it's actually rather simple, and that's sort of that. And we should just basically add some. Let's see here. We add a comment here. Comment here. Choose comment and this here. So this is where we in a sense, so we just call this prefab spawn code. So now we have this here, and here we write a comment. Let's see here. Whoops. Comment here. Let's just add this here, and remove it. So now you can like see here. So now we write here like add velocity, correct rotation, and despawn node logic, right? Add velocity, correct rotation, and despawn node logic. So this is the velocity we add here, this is the correct rotation, and this is the despawn logic. That's all you need, and then it sort of like runs. So now you can like see how much code it sort of like takes to make something like this run. Can we and here, let's make this look a bit nicer. and here, and good enough, I guess. So that's sort of like how simple it is. First we have the sort of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 counter here. That was this box. This is where we like spawn it, and the only difference is here that what I then added is that it either like let's see if we can find it. There are the two barrels. When the counter hits 6 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then this can shoot, but only on that frame. Then it will count 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and when it reaches 12, it can shoot from this barrel. And then it will go back to 1 and start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and when it hits 6, it can shoot from this barrel. Then it will get like 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 12, and then it will shoot here. So that's in a sense how it's, I'm sort of like making sure that it shoots at some like the correct moments. And that's what this does. This is spawns at one of the barrels. This here spawns at the top, at the right barrel, and this here spawns at the left barrel. But you can see that it's the same code. It just spawns it at gun spawn point 2, and this starts at gun spawn point 1. And so that the only difference here is that the position that these are spawned from originally isn't the same. It's the two different spawn points that I added here, where one of them is in front of one barrel and the other one is in front of the other barrel. So you can like see that's sort of like how I like switch between these two for like shooting from either barrels, and then it looks like this. So that's how you create this, and I hope you have like a bit of an idea of how you can like work in FLAX. And that's sort of that, and it's sort of like creating a simple spaceship shooter. So I think this is a good start, and that's it. Yeah, thank you. Bye.